Okay, so we are still talking about factoring, and so we're in our third section of factoring. We talked about factoring out the greatest common factor. We talked about factoring by, I think we talked about factoring by grouping a little bit already. And then we talked about factoring when we have x squared plus bx plus c, where the leading coefficient has to be 1. And now we're looking at a more general case. So we're going to put some of that stuff together. And how this happened, I don't know. Now, this one is one. You talk about who came up with this. I don't know who came up with this, but it's wonderful. When I learned how to factor, we didn't have this. And probably for many years when I taught here, this didn't exist. And one day it appeared in the textbook. It was like magic. So it's a beautiful thing. But anyway, factoring by grouping. So we got some steps here. What we're going to do is multiply that leading coefficient and the constant. We get a product, right, when we multiply. So we're going to find two integers with that product, but that add up to the middle term or the middle coefficient, okay? And then we rewrite that middle coefficient using those two numbers that we found. Well, the part that we did, they already had it broken out for us. But now we're going to have to figure out how to get those four terms ourselves. But yeah, we did kind of do this. So let's just go ahead and take a look at it. We want to factor 3x squared plus 16x plus 5. And so I'm going to look at the leading coefficient and the constant and multiply them. We get 15. Then I'm looking at factors of 15 that add up to 16. They would be what? 1 and 15. So what I do is I rewrite 16x using these numbers. So we get 3x squared plus x plus 15x plus 5. So 16x we've now written as x plus 15x. And now we can factor by grouping. Okay, so we group the first two, group the second two. We can factor out what? X. We're left with 3x plus 1. And then here we can factor out 5. We're left with 3x plus 1. Okay, now, okay, the 3x plus 1s, we can factor them out. And then we get x plus 5. Okay. Because we got the x left here and the 5 here. Okay, we factored off the 3x plus 1. Which one's in the middle? We factored them out, right? Because we have here two large terms. This is one term and this is another. What do they have in common? 3x plus 1. So we factored that off, and what's left was x plus 5. Okay. All right, factor completely. All right, these are directions that you'll see often. Okay, so I'm looking at A. We've got 12x squared plus 28x minus 5. So I'm going to look at the product of 12 and negative 5. So we get negative 60. I need factors of negative 60 that add up to 28. What is it? Okay, so 2. So negative 2 and positive 30. Okay, negative 2, positive 30. All right, so we get 12x squared. We could do plus 30x. We could do minus 2x. Okay, it won't matter, except if I do that minus 2x first, then I won't have to worry about factoring out that negative. But let's do it with the 30, so you'll see what we're talking about. Minus 2x minus 5. Okay, so I group 12x squared plus 30x. Okay, Here, when I put the minus inside parentheses, we're going to have what? 2x plus 5. We factored off a -1 when we put the parentheses there. So for these first two, I can factor off 6x, left with, very good. So now we have 2x plus 5 in common. If I factor that off, what am I left with? Very good. 6x minus 1. Don't forget the 1 that's there.
Why is there a 6x on the outside of the other 2x?
Because when I looked at these two, what they had in common was 6x.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, in B, we've got 40x squared minus 100x minus 60. The first thing I'm going to do is what? You could do that, but first thing we need to do is take out that 20. That's going to save us some trouble. Okay, don't forget, first step every time is to look for any greatest common factors. So I can factor out 20. I'm left with 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. That's going to be a lot nicer to work with. Okay, now when I multiply my leading coefficient and my constant, I've got -6. The factors of -6 that add up to -5 are what? Okay. Nope. -3 and -2 don't give us -6. Yeah, but when you multiply, wait, no, -3 times -2 is +6. This one is always tricky. So make sure you pay. If we're talking about one of them is going to have to be positive, one negative. -6 and 1. Okay, that gives us a product of -6, and when we add them together, that gives us negative. Be careful about that one because, yeah, it looks like that would work, but that doesn't. So we get that 2x squared. I'm going to put minus 6x first, plus x minus 3. Okay. If I put the -6x first, then I won't have to worry about factoring that out. So for the first two, I'm going to factor out what? 2x. I'm left with x minus 3. Over here, I have x minus 3. Okay, so we bring the 20 down. Two x plus 1 times x minus 3. Okay, or 20. Okay, questions about that? Okay, I'm going to let you try C on your own. Okay, so in C, if I multiply 4 times -15, we get -60. So what are the factors of -60 that add up to +18? Anybody? Nothing? Okay, still working on it? Okay, all right. Well, let's see. All right, look, we got to make sure. All right, so -1, look, we can look at 1 and 60, 2 and 30, okay, 3 and 10, right? Or 3 and 20, okay? 4 and 15, 5 and 12, 6 and 10, okay? 7, 8 doesn't work. 9, okay? So looks like nothing's going to work. So we would just say that this one is prime. You can't factor it. Okay?
There's only like 2 of those on the homework, so.
Yeah, well, not a lot of them are prime.
I was like, it's prime.
Okay. All right, questions about this? Okay. All right. Well, this is what I learned, or how I learned to factor, um, just by trial and error. Um, what we do, this is another method, and I think there are some times when this method has an advantage over grouping. But it says list the factors of ax squared that are possibilities for the first term of each factor. Um, so when I look at 3x squared, I know if I'm going to write this as a binomial, it's going to end up being 3x times x, because the only factors of 3 are 1 and 3. So in cases where, let's say, both that leading term and the constant have very few factors, then this might work quicker. Okay. But I know already if I'm going to factor this thing, it's going to look something like that. Does that make sense? Okay. But then with the 18, there's a good many more possibilities. So it says list the factors of C. These are possibilities for the second term. So with 18, we got 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Okay, and that's it. So we would have to kind of try all of those out to see which ones will work so that we get negative 25 in the middle. So we got 3x and x. And let's say I use 1 and 18. I know one of them has to be positive. The other has to be negative. Okay. So 18 times 3 minus 1x, that's way too big, right? Yes? Okay. And we already know which one of these is going to have to be positive. Mm, it would end up being the negative 18 because we got negative in the middle, right? If it was going to work. Okay? Because the middle term that we're trying to add up to is negative. So this would be that way. Okay, so let's try 2 and 9. So 3x, let's say we put 2 here, x and 9. Does that work? 27, we could get 2. That might work, right? How could I put this? Where would I put the plus and the minus? Okay, minus plus 2 minus 9. Okay, so we get negative 27 plus 2x. That would give us minus 25x. Okay, so that works. So you just kind of make a list of the possibilities for your first term and then list the possibilities for the last term and then try them out and see. And again, if your lists are short, then it won't take you long to try to figure this out. Okay, and then don't forget, to swap them up. Okay, because we'd get a different result if we put here 3x and the 18 and then x and the 1. That would give us a different possibility. The products we still get, would it give us the right middle term? And of course, it won't. We know now, but you still have to swap them all up. Okay, questions about that? All right. I would only use that when, I only have a few possibilities. So like in A here, we got 5x squared plus 16x plus 3. So I know when I set this up for 5x, I'm going to have 5x as a first term and x, because 1 and 5 are the only factors of 5, right? For 3, the only factors that I have are what? 1 and 3. So I could try putting a 1 here and a 3 here. I'm just kind of testing it out. That would give me 1x and 15x. That works, right? Both of them are going to be positive, so we'll say plus 1 plus 3. And we're done. But again, we only had a few possibilities. Okay. B is probably going to be a little more involved. Okay. For 12x, we could have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. That's a lot of possibilities. For 35, 1 and 35, and 5 and 7. So we might be here a minute trying things out. We just got to jump in and do it. Let's try. Want to try 3 and 4? Okay, so 3x, 4x, and then we're going to pair that with 5 and 7 right here. Okay, so, okay, so you want to swap it around. All right, so when we test that out, we can get 15x, 28x. Okay, 28 minus 15 could give us 13. So we need to make which one positive? Okay, plus 7 and minus 5. So we get negative 35. Is that right?
Yeah, the other way.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't work. Okay.
No, 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 it does.
Well, we need to change the signs, right?
No.
No?
It's 28x. You got to get 28x. Well, you can have negative 15.
So 28 minus 15, that's right. So this is going to be plus minus. Very good. All right. Questions about that? So yeah, play with the signs and everything. Make sure it all um, adds up. All right. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
The one we just did, the 12x squared plus 13x minus 35, if we were to attempt to solve that one by factoring by grouping, how
Uh-huh.
would we handle that first term, 12x squared?
Well, if
Or
you're
would you even try?
well, if you were trying to do this by factoring by grouping, we do 12 times 35, right? And then you just have to try to list all of the factors of
Yeah, and I got that. That was actually pretty simple. But when I'm actually trying to put together what the first term in each of my sets of parentheses is, that's where I'm kind of hiccuping
okay,
because there's several different options that could give me 12x squared.
okay. Yeah, but when you're factoring by grouping, you don't have to worry about that. So, if we were doing this by grouping,
It's 15 and negative 28 gives you negative 420.
okay, so let's just for the record, we've got 12x squared plus 13x minus 35. So you multiply 12 times 35 and you get what?
Negative 420.
Okay, negative 420. It was negative 35. So negative 420. And you found which factors?
15 and 28.
Okay,
Both negative.
15, 28, and which one is negative?
15 is going to be negative.
Okay, so um, we're saying that negative 15 times 28 is negative 420, and negative 15 plus 28 is 13x. So now what you do is you say 12x squared, and it doesn't matter really which one you put first, but I usually put the negative first, okay, plus 28x minus 35. And then we group the first two, group the last two. In the first two, what they have in common is what? 3x. We're left with 4x minus 5. In the second two, what do they have in common? 7. We're left with 4x minus 5. So now we've got 4x minus 5 in common. I mean, it works itself out. We don't have to.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to do that step backwards, I think. I'm not sure what I was trying to do now.
And when we factor by grouping, it works itself out. Okay. All right. Other questions? Okay, very good.